And now we're going to talk about the play. Now we're going to talk to people that have been involved, live with the illness, work with the illness, and we're going to dissect it a little bit. And I get to introduce our moderator. Margareta is the Managing Director of the Resource Work Society, a Vancouver-based nonprofit. Margareta is a strategic communicator, public policy advocate. She's incredibly busy. She's also the director on the BC Schizophrenia Society Foundation, and I get to work with Margareta on many projects and initiatives. So thank you for everything that you do for BCSS, and thank you for moderating tonight's event.
So we'll be getting this panel started shortly, and as I introduce our panelists for today's conversation, I'll encourage them to come up as they're being introduced. And I think we have enough space. 3, 1, 2, 3. I feel like we may need more. Okay, I can stand for at least a little bit. So we'll start off by saying thank you so much to Phaedra and the team for the incredible work that you guys do day in and day out. It's been my pleasure to be involved with the BC Schizophrenia Society Foundation for the last couple of years. That was a very, very moving performance, and really grateful for all the work that was done, not only to write a beautiful script, which we'll get to dive into a little bit more, but for the performance. I'm someone whose father lived with schizophrenia. I have experienced aspects of what we saw on that stage, and I know that many other people in the room had the same feelings, so it's been a lot to see that. So for today's conversation, we're going to be hearing from 4 remarkable individuals. First one right off the bat is playwright Peter Zednik, and we're so pleased that you could be here today celebrating what I hear is the 20th anniversary of this play, thereabouts. Peter has enjoyed a 25-year career in professional theater. He's been a performer, musician, administrator, and playwright, and he's a 3-time winner of the Canadian Playwriting Competition. His plays have been produced throughout Canada and the United States, have garnered 2 Jessie Award nominations and 1 win for Outstanding New Script of the Year. Peter's most cherished accolades are being named a lifetime honorary member of the Greater Vancouver Professional Theatre Alliance and the Professional Association of Canadian Theatres for his volunteer work behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Peter. Next up, we have Oliver O'Day. Oliver is a local musician living with mental illness. Oliver was featured in a video produced by BCSS last year, where he courageously shared his journey with schizophrenia. Oliver facilitates groups and is a musician with a mission. His music touches on real-life experiences, being a trans-identified person and a person living with a mental illness. Through his music, Oliver hopes to incite peace and help smash stigma. Welcome to the panel. Anywhere comfortable. Yeah, you guys are welcome to just sit wherever you'd like. We don't have a sitting order, so anything that works. It's a little bit too tall for me. Sorry, Phaedra. You're a little bit taller than I am. So, also joining us today is Hardeep Thind. Hardeep has worked for BCSS for decades, and I know many people recognize her for the support she's provided and her expertise and knowledge in this space. She's now the Coastal Regional Manager for BCSS, and in this role, she's part of a multi-person team that's providing resources and support for families with a loved one dealing with schizophrenia or other serious mental illnesses. And she also organizes and facilitates family support group meetings and education programs for families. Great to have you here, Hardeep, and looking forward to chatting with you as well. And very much last but not least, our final panelist is Dr. Mahesh Menon. Dr. Menon is a registered psychologist and clinical associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at UBC. His research focuses on understanding the cognitive mechanisms and brain networks associated with the symptoms of psychosis and in understanding the role psychotherapy plays in improving these symptoms. Dr. Menon was the recipient of the BCSS Champion Award in 2021, which is given to people who have played an essential role in promoting its vision of a province where those living affected by schizophrenia receive excellent treatment and support. Great to have you here as well. Perfect. I'll be right here in the middle. And yeah, just before we get rolling here, a little bit more about myself. Adrian mentioned a bit of my bio. I work in and around policy advocacy. I don't work in and around things related to mental health and mental illness, but it's wonderful to be involved with this group. It really is a community. Minister Whiteside really underscored the importance of having strong support networks, and it's wonderful to see the work that has gone in. I saw someone earlier here, I couldn't remember their name, but she said that she's in her 90s now and was involved in founding a chapter on Vancouver Island with Viola. Yeah, and I was just thinking, wow, that's incredible. I've seen just how many years and decades of people's effort and energies and passion for this have been sunk into creating this kind of community. So it's really wonderful to see that. It's not just a celebration of the knowledge and the expertise we're going to hear a little bit about on this panel, but also the community that everyone here has built. So really pleased to be a part of that. Keep losing my papers. So we're going to get rolling with a couple of questions and see where time finds us. First off, we're going to start with Peter, our playwright. And I feel like a lot of people probably saw a little bit of their own stories and experiences in that, but I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write the play?
Okay, I'm on. Okay, this is really humbling because in terms of knowledge, you all know more than I do about this subject. So my area of expertise is an entirely different thing. Playwrights often will draw on their own experiences, something that they know, something that they experience in their life that inspires them, and there's a story grabs hold of them and won't let go. And often the plays that I write are drawn autobiographically. This is not one of those plays, because sometimes somebody comes along and says, we need a play about this, and you have to consider, do I know anything about it? Could I write it? Could I try to capture the emotional situations of this? And that is how this came about. Susan Inman is here. Yeah. And Susan was a high school drama teacher, and her daughter was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she desperately wanted a play for young audiences. So this play was written for teenage audiences on the subject of schizophrenia. And she was so passionate about it, she actually developed a competition, and there was a cash prize that I believe she funded. I mean, this woman is a force of nature. So when I saw the invitation, I thought, I'm empty. I don't know anything about this. I saw the film A Beautiful Mind, and it was intriguing, but I don't know anything. But I owed it to myself to do some research. And the more I researched first the medical symptoms and treatments and all the sort of facts and scientific things. But then I started reading blogs from people who had experienced it or were relatives or friends of people with schizophrenia. And the emotions started to come out and a story started to form. And basically, I wrote this play. Okay, I'll confess. I wrote 2 plays on it. That's how inspired I was. I wrote 2 completely different plays. And this is the one that I submitted, and it was the one that was chosen, I think, by a panel of playwrights. And that's how it came about.
Well, it's incredible to see someone who doesn't have that lived experience taking on the task and the challenge. As Phaedra was saying earlier, it's about awareness. And I didn't know that factoid about how the play got going. So, kudos to Susan, not only for this, but just years and years of work and what continues to be a very active advocacy project and work that she continues to do. So that's really wonderful. In terms of what you were writing for, you've explained some of the foundations of that. It was a competition. You wanted to respond to a need in the community. What do you hope that listeners and audience members get out of an experience like this reading or a full staging of the play?
I had a lot of experience with the genre that's called theater for young audiences, and it's a very underrated genre where plays are done professionally for children, little kids up to teenagers. It's sort of, they think of young adult fiction as sort of the corollary. And in a lot of those plays, the protagonist is somebody who's perceived as different. They might have different color skin, speak a different language, they might not be as smart as everybody else in the room, they may have a different sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, the human reaction to somebody who's different often is, it could be mocking, it could be fear, it could be hatred, it could be just a lack of understanding, so a complete avoidance. And so a lot of the plays center around somebody who's perceived as different in order to show their story and the emotions and the reality of their situations, so that audiences develop empathy. And they might think differently the next time they see somebody who is different from them. And I don't know, it sounds corny, but we all want to make a better world. And you start with the kids.
I'll be honest, I didn't clue in that it was written for younger audiences until you mentioned it. So thank you for also having it be a valuable experiential experience for all of us of different ages. And I can see the way that can be really impactful. We learn a lot about isolation and feelings of alienation, whether you're someone living with the illness, you have a family member living with it, and it's meaningful to be seen in literature, in art, in everything that's out there in the world. I wanted to ask you finally just about your feelings. It's been 20 years since you wrote it, a 20-year hiatus. What does that feel like to have written this and to have it out in the world and back in this form tonight?
Okay, on the really positive side, when you're writing, it is so solitary. You are so alone and in your head, and you have no idea whether what you're writing is impactful or not. You hope it is. And what brings a play to life is it being read or performed. And the more committed the performers are, the more impact it has. And you guys were amazing. The actors, you just... You'd think that after 20 years I'd say, oh yeah, that scene. I was sitting up there, I was crying, okay, I confess. On the other side, I wrote the play 20 years ago. And one of the major things that has changed is social media for kids, right? And if you're writing a play about feeling like you might be being watched or people are communicating with you, wow, how complicated that would be if social media were in there. And that is why it was absent, because 2003, that just wasn't the case. There are a couple other things in the play that feel a little dated to me, but it was lovely that it was still impactful and it carried through.
I'm very, very impressed just by how timely and relevant. And I don't know, some of these experiences are probably universal to those who have loved ones with schizophrenia or experience illness or work in a professional capacity or do anything, whether it's support services or clinical care and research. And then, of course, things do change. And we're also, as I mentioned earlier, really privileged to be joined by Oliver, who does have lived experience. And I wanted to ask a little bit about what your experiences have been like with schizophrenia. And there's some themes that we've seen throughout the play around treatment. And it's sort of a nice little narrative arc that's followed. So I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about what your experiences have been like.
Absolutely, and that was such an impactful play, I have to say, right off the bat. Like, I'm not a crier at all, and my eyes are still wet. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was kind of a long journey to get diagnosed, but as it mentioned in the play, it can take a really long time. But I started to experience voices and visions and weird sensory things probably around age 14 that no one picked up on because I wasn't that close with my biological family, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of support to tell people what I was experiencing. So, I thought God was talking to me, and it was very complicated. But when I started to actually reach out to someone, when I started to build my own support system, I call it my found family, that's when I was able to actually, get support and treatment. And treatment to me doesn't mean just medication, though. I have to emphasize that, because to me, treatment was housing support. Treatment was friends and people that love me. Treatment was counseling, much of which I paid for out of pocket because it's not covered, which is completely ridiculous. But I have been mostly stable. Like I have peaks and valleys, but for the most part, I'm working as a peer support worker now, and have been for a good solid 8-9 years now. I'm on medication that works most of the time. It's not always perfect. I still hear voices every day, but for the most part, I'm in a place in my life where I can say I'm in a recovery space. So it's a journey, it's a lifelong journey, and like the play highlighted, there is no cure, and that scared me a lot at first, but now I know it's something that I can live with, and that I don't have to fight against. It's something I can fight for.
That was really beautifully put. Yeah, I think a lot of us have that experience as well. It's the inevitability of something, and if you're able to bring yourself to the point where you're able to look it in the face and acknowledge, what are the limits of what you can do, what are the things you can change. It's a really nice way that you put it, much more eloquent than I did. Watching the play, there's a few things that really stood out to me. For example, just the delay in diagnosis. It's not something that I experienced because my dad was diagnosed before I was born, but I'm sure everyone sort of picked up on something that connected to a piece that they had personally experienced, whether it was structural factors or limitations, personal experiences. What were your biggest takeaways watching that?
Oh, I was trying to think of how to answer this question, but I couldn't. I was too focused on the play. I was given the questions in advance, which I was really grateful for. But I think the need for support in everyone's journey. It doesn't even matter like what we're facing. We need people on our side. I was definitely, the image of the father was a very stark one for me. It was just like, this is someone who hasn't had support, and this was their outcome. And that was like, it struck me a lot, yeah.
Similar, yeah. It's, I don't know, we deal very often, I'm sure a lot of us, and I heard echoes of this in comments that past speakers made, it's almost challenging to talk about this because there is so much stigma. Yeah. And then, just to see it laid out, for me, it was just like a very visceral moment, because it's been years since, I've had long conversations with someone who was going through a moment of crisis and not receiving treatment, and really brought me back. So, yeah, you're very right. We need that support. We need people to reach out to us, and of course, it's so wonderful that folks like the BCSS and the work that you do as well are there to support folks. Thank you so much for that. And speaking of support and finding ways to create community and reach out to more people, we'll be talking to Hardeep now. And as everyone knows, I've heard a lot of cheers and applause. You've been with the BCS for quite some time. I work with families on a daily basis, and we wanted to ask you how the script relates to what it's like working with families and what you see on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, I have been here for a while, and it was really well done, like exceptionally well done, and thank you to our director and our cast. Schizophrenia, it strikes folks when they're young, and what was happening in her life is what's happening in most of our folks' lives, right? And so the calls that our staff usually receive are stuff like that. They can't pinpoint it, but something's off. Like they know in their heart something's just not feeling right. and they just get on the computer nowadays and start Googling stuff, and they usually kind of arrive in our website, and then we get an email, quite late the night or early in the morning type of thing. People are just looking for clues, what's going on, what's different, what's going on. And, Nina, I think so many mums and dads can relate to you just, what can we do? How can we help? I know something's going on. Please share with me. And this is a relationship we had and what's going on for us now. It's just, it breaks my heart because that's the calls that we get from people, right? And it doesn't matter where you are in that stage. It could be newly not knowing or in the system for a while, right? Folks can struggle and parents are really having a hard time with it as well, or any caregiver. So I just want to say that people that come to our support groups, oh my goodness, like there's nothing like feeling like someone gets you, like, whoa, right? And that was a piece you were missing, Nina. You were missing that. How do I figure out what I got to do, right? So we're really fortunate that we offer that piece in the Lower Mainland now, 3 places in person and across the province. So please get connected to people. Just because you walk in the door doesn't mean you're going to get your questions answered immediately, but you'll be with like-minded people, and there's nothing that beats that. Absolutely nothing. And I'm really cold, sorry. Are you guys cold?
Wrong decision to wear something sleeveless on my end. Outside, a little bit warm. So this play talked about a hospital setting. I know you do work in a variety of different contexts, and one piece that we were also wondering about is what you're hearing from families about community treatment. And as we talk about community treatment, how do you ensure that the type of care and support and the broad team to support families and consumers can be there when community treatment is used?
So we are very strong believers that treatments or being engaged starts the minute your loved one is fortunate enough to get into hospital, right? So if they're in hospital and you're receiving the type of care we showed here, and then you get discharged, is be involved. I always say, make a point of finding out who the social worker on the floor is, give them your name and number, and just let them know that you're connected. Generally speaking, as we are all probably very aware, we are the delusion as the family member, right? It's like they don't want any part of us. It's because of you and all that sort of stuff. But just get your name onto the file. I'm the mom, the dad, the sibling, the neighbor, the auntie, whoever it is that has that connection, because they will come around. I know it's heartbreaking to hear when they don't want any part of you in their life at that moment. But, we are very fortunate that folks come around. I've had such amazing experience supporting families who just were gutted with the loved one wanting no part of them, and seeing the turnaround, that is incredible. So rewarding, absolutely so rewarding to see that it does come around. And when you're in the middle of it all and you think your family member hates you and you're the reason why they're like this and all that sort of stuff, it's gut-wrenching. It really is, as you can all probably attest to that, right? But being with other people, understanding this is what the illness is about and why maybe some of the things are being said, and continuing to seek people that get you, that want to support you, want to hear you, want to hold you, and just kind of want to help you. And compassion goes a long way. We know that the healthcare system, people are exhausted, but it's not an excuse. But at the same time, give them compassion and hopefully you'll get compassion back, right? Everybody's trying to do the best. And that's what I always say. The doctors want to help your child as much as you want to help your child, right? We all want to be in this together to get the best outcomes. So let's try to all meet each other with a little bit more compassion. They're exhausted, and you're usually not at your best when you're showing up at hospital, right? Because you are just gutted. And more importantly, you're just looking for answers, for clues, something to hold on to. And if you get that, I can't talk to you right now, that's pretty hard, isn't it? It's really, really difficult. So we have lots of different ways to work through confidentiality, so reach out to us. I'm not saying that we have every answer, but we have ways to help engage you in the process. And there's lots more I could say, as you know.
I think one of the pieces that most gripped me was that search for answers, and that moment where Marley's in the hospital with her mother and the doctor, and sort of like, when will the pin finally drop? When is the doctor going to clue in? Do they know right off the bat that that's where things were headed? Or well, I guess we have a doctor here who knows how these things work, so can probably shed some light. And yeah, and just in terms of working directly with people with lived experience and family members, did you get the sense that the challenges depicted in the script were similar to those you encountered with patients, or were there things missing that you felt you wanted to share just around how that experience usually goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was saying to Peter earlier as well, like I was struck by how accurate that felt, just in terms of, how those experiences kind of map on to the folks that we see going through those difficulties as well. Certainly there are those shifts over the course of the illness, and I think we recognize that the diagnosis is an evolving process in some way, and the line that we are trying to work with people around is just trying to figure out, like, what might be the things which are helpful for them, just to sort of put a name to the experience that they have, so that they're not alone in doing it, and at the same time sort of trying to balance that out against the fear and the stigma that the diagnosis part itself kind of brings up for people, and we're just often trying to get people to recognize, like, when we are using a diagnostic label, that to us in the system is a shortcut. It's a way for us to be able to say, oh, this is what's going on. But at the end of the day, we really want each person to understand their experience in terms of kind of the vulnerabilities that have arisen for them, but also, this is just an experience that we need to find a way for you to work through and not get stuck in, oh, what does that mean for me? Is this the end of my life? All of those fearful thoughts that would arise from the diagnosis itself.
I think it's a phenomenal insight into, an aspect of the play that Oliver touched on as well, that you end up sort of feeling this thing, oh no, what does this mean? How am I going to live with this? Yeah. But getting away from just the diagnosis, yes, taking it as a shortcut that helps you identify solutions, but also something that can help you find what it is to find stability and maintenance, whatever treatment works for you. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. In terms of the role of families, and I get the sense that it's probably a good number of people in the room who have family experience, we wanted to ask you to share what you've seen be really effective. How can we continue to strengthen the circle of care between family members, treatment teams, and people with lived experience?
Yeah, I think that Hardeep brought up a really important point. When young people are oftentimes diagnosed with that, they're struggling with a twofer. I think one part is that it hits at a time where they're just kind of finding their own identities, and they're sort of like trying to like pull away, from families, and for someone who's not struggling with those, it would just be being a bratty teenager, right? Just kind of like, I'm sneaking out at night and doing those things. But unfortunately, at this point, there's this big overlay of the paranoia and the fear and all of that stuff that happens. And the people who are the closest to them and trying to push for help, oftentimes kind of asking them to do the things that they might not want to do, are the ones that can end up looking like the bad guys in that situation. And so it is really hard that families are often the ones who are left with this very difficult balance of trying to get their loved one into care, and also have to, stay with them through that whole journey. And what I often say to family members is, you're stuck walking this fine line where you're helping your loved one do something that they might not want to do, but at the same time, you don't want to be the bad guy in that situation for asking them to for instance, take medications, because you're going to be with them through the journey, and the rest of us, are kind of coming in and out in some ways. So lots of times, we as the care team want to be able to say, look, if it's a hard conversation to have, like, I'm happy to have that, to be the bad guy if I need to, so that you can be the ally through them on that journey. Yes. And I think the thing which is the most helpful, I think, for family members with their loved ones, is to be able to say, what do I need to keep reminding you that, I'm on your side, even if what I'm asking you to do might not be something that you may feel like you need at that point in time. I think that is certainly a delicate position to be in. And I think with your care team itself, I think what is oftentimes helpful is trying to figure out, as Hardeep and other people have mentioned, how to stay connected with them in that process, even if, you know, your loved ones are saying, you know, like, there may be a point where they say you can't share information with them, and they have the option to do that. However, you as a family member are allowed to share information with the team, which can be really helpful for the ongoing care. And I think if there is sort of a transparent way to be able to do that, and the rationale for that is something that they will come around to it, I think, at the end of it. And being connected to them through that process is ultimately the most helpful thing that you could give them. And I think you described it so nicely that, you know, just feeling like there is a sense of connection outside is so huge for the recovery process.
It's no surprise to me why you won the champion award. I got warm fuzzies. I was like, oh, wow, if a whole doctor spoke like that, how nice would that would be as an experience. Professional bad guy, it's good. Yeah, there's a lot of work that's needed across the board to advance on all the different areas. Storytellers, support workers, clinicians, peer supporters can advance. There's roles for families. I know we're kind of technically at the end of our panel, but I wanted to give panelists a chance to share maybe just a couple of sentences what you wish this room would take into their lives. Is there any insight you think would be particularly valuable or useful? If you guys want to run, go ahead. You can think about it.
To me, I think one of the things, you know, this is probably the same message to families as I give to my students and actually the people that we work with as well. I work at a place called BC Psychosis Program, which is what's referred to sort of as a tertiary inpatient unit. So it is a highly specialized program for people who have not had a full response to treatment in their home communities. And I think lots of times when we are seeing those persistent symptoms, it can feel a little hopeless. We can get a little bit nihilistic, I think, even within the healthcare system around kind of the potential for care and the potential for change. And I think to me, one of the most important things is actually just that idea that we do we have to find goals and meaning and connection, and the symptoms are something that sort of happens alongside, but how can we kind of have a sense of ourselves which is beyond it and much larger than that sense? And I think, like the way Oliver described it, is so much better and more articulate. But I think that is the hope that I have, that it's important not to be nihilistic at those points in time, and to think that we can really all still have really meaningful lives and meaningful connections, even if we have persistent symptoms that linger.
Yeah, to build on that, I want to share a small anecdote. A friend of mine who has become family to me, and I've known her for many years, and she's been the one to take me to the hospital late at night many times, or, you know, spend long hours with me while I'm just not myself. And she, in those moments, says, "I'm holding your hope for you." When I don't feel like I can hold my hope myself, she holds it for me. And for any loved ones supporting someone who has a mental illness, hold their hope for them.
I was just going to touch on the same piece about hope, because we share that in our support groups all the time, and that's our tagline with BCSS as well, is things will get better, even though they seem like they might not, but what does better mean, right? So we have to keep that in perspective as well, right? It may not end up where we all thought we were going 20 plus years ago, and it might be a different destination now. So I just want to remind people, keep hope, but also, you know, let it be their journey of what it is they want in their recovery as well. Because as family members, boy, we want them to aim for the moon, right? And just get right back in it. So sometimes we have to readjust those goals as well when we think about hope.
And on a completely different topic, art and artists are often perceived as flaky, out of touch with reality, out in some other la-la land. And when art intersects with what happens in real life and touches real emotions, you can see that it's not any of those things. It's essential. And thank you for all coming to see a piece of art that is intersecting with your lives.
It's a form of advocacy, and thank you to everyone who advocates, who speaks on these issues, who is a part of making all of this possible. And I want to say a special thanks to all of our panelists for their time, and once again, thank you, Peter, for writing this, and to Jane and the team of actors for delivering this beautiful piece of work. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Margareta. So huge thank you to Oliver. I got to meet you when we did the video and haven't forgotten you. Mahesh, thank you very much for your time and for all that you do for families. Hardeep, you heard the applause. You are... You are incredible, and just thank you for everything that you do for BCSS. You're a huge part of this team. And for Peter, thank you for your insight. I was thrilled that you were willing to be a panelist, to be able to talk about what prompted you to write this play, and it was just so interesting to hear your journey, and I really appreciate your insight, how art and real life can intersect. And artists are definitely not all flaky, so thanks for being here. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight. It's so nice to look out and see all these faces, and emotion is not a bad thing. So if there was tears, that's okay. Look at me now. It's not a bad thing. If you want to see a video of tonight's performance, it will be recorded, so please share it far and wide. We have to do everything we can, as we said, to keep talking about this illness, to increase awareness, and to help decrease the stigma. There was so much stigma. Oliver touched on it tonight. It was in the play tonight. That stigma is such a huge factor. If somebody has cancer or Parkinson's, we embrace them. We wrap our arms around them. If somebody has schizophrenia, we as a society still tend to lean out rather than lean in. And I want to get to a point where we as a society can begin to lean in a lot more than what we're doing now. So let's make a pact before we leave that we, each and every one of us, and I know we all get this, that we will make a pact to lean in whenever we can and to remind people to stop leaning out. Thank you. And if you're not a member of BCSS, please become one. It's free. It helps increase our voice. It helps strengthen our partnerships that we are so grateful for, including with the provincial government. We are just so grateful for all of our partners and for every single person that makes BCS successful and allows people like Hardeep to continue doing what she does. Because that's what we need. We need more Hardeeps. And Max, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a sponsor of this event. Thank you to the Asuka Lundbach Alliance for your continued support. Thank you for being here, Max. And a big thank you to all BCSS families across this entire province. BCSS has been around for 40 years. We know many of you. And having a loved one with a mental illness is not easy. And it's hard to remember to take care of yourself as a family member. But as Hardeep said, BCSS is here to walk with you. We are here to do everything we possibly can to support you wherever you're at in your journey with your loved one. So please reach out to us, know we are here, and just remember that you are not alone. And thank you to all the clinicians that include families in the circle of care, and for all your hard work to ensure that families are a part of that circle care. And last but not least, thank you to the BCSS board members. I'm looking at Jack Middleton right now. Thank you, Jack. Jack is the president of BCSS. David Halikowski, who has been with BCSS for many years as our vice president. Susan Inman, thank you for introducing us to Peter to bring this play to life. Susan, I can't see you, but there you are. Thank you for everything. Dr. John Gray, I've never met a man more dedicated than this man over here. He is absolutely incredible. Renato, I haven't forgotten about you. He is the chair of the foundation board, and of course Margareta, who is a director on the foundation board. I am so grateful to have the honor of working with each of you and the entire team. My team is, they're amazing. So there's a lot of educators and managers in this room tonight, the provincial office. Thank you for all that you do. And like I said earlier, thank you for all the work that went into this event. Looking at you, Marcia. But just thanks for, I have the honor of working with you. So thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing your time, and we will meet again. Thank you.
Doce balanço a caminho do mar, moçado corpo.